as Prime Minister Manmohan Singh seems to be moving rather quickly to allay fears of the tax policy in India. Sources at ET now tell us that the General Anti-Avoidance Rules or GAAR could well be on its way out. And not just that, also in a big relief for Vodafone, the government is unlikely to issue a fresh tax notice on the company over the next few months. Let's take it straight to Suchetna Ray to understand more on the same issue. Suchetna, I'll start off with GAAR. What are you picking up in terms of this?
Avan, sources in Finance Ministry tell us that the directive from the Prime Minister's office is clear. The priority should be to lift investor sentiment, and for that, if it means that certain amendments made in the budget this year will have to be kept on the back burner, then so be it. Sources indicate that clarification on the general anti-avoidance rules will be issued in the next 2 to 3 weeks. In fact, in that, sources indicate it will be clarified that P-notes will be kept out of the radar. Also, to remember that there has been a lot of speculation about the actual definition of substantial commercial interest for which GAAR will not be invoked. So those definitions will also be clarified once that circular on GAAR is issued. Also to be clarified is exactly the intent of GAAR and on whom will the GAAR actually be invoked. So these are the likely clarifications which will be issued by in a circular from the Prime Minister's office, is what sources indicate.
Many thanks, Suchetna, for giving us that perspective. But of course, this is going to come as a major breather for Vodafone, as the government may not issue a notice just as yet. We've got Ashwin Mohan standing by in our Mumbai newsroom to give us the details on the same. Ashwin.
That's right, Avan. In fact, one important factor that needs to be kept in mind is that when the controversial retrospective tax amendments were introduced in Budget 2012, at that point of time, there were severe differences between Manmohan Singh and Pranab Mukherjee. Manmohan Singh, of course, was quite concerned about keeping the diplomatic relations intact, whereas Pranab Mukherjee was looking at revenue collections. And therefore, this is clearly looking like a sort of U-turn as far as the government's entire tax policy is concerned. Now that Pranab Mukherjee has shifted to Rasina Hill, Manmohan Singh has realized that the controversial retrospective tax amendments haven't paid off. They have, in fact, spooked the markets. And therefore, what I now understand is that there is, in the next few weeks, one important date to be looked out for, of course, is July 10th, because July 10th is when MacLeod-Russell, which has challenged the constitutional validity of the government's amendments, that case will come up for hearing at the Calcutta High Court. And what I understand from sources is that the government will wait and watch to see how the Calcutta High Court reacts to that, and then it will take a call on the retrospective tax amendments. But clearly there seems to be a softening and a dilution of stance as far as the government's tax policy is concerned, and that, of course, is big news, big breaking news and happy news for all investors as well as India Inc., which was left wondering what they would do in an uncertain tax environment.
Thanks for that, Ashwin, and just hold that thought. Suchetna, I know you touched upon this point, but just wanted to reiterate and get more details. You did mention that it's probably likely that the P-notes will be kept out of the tax net. Are there any more details that you're picking up on the same?
Avan, as of now, we know that the Finance Ministry officials are working overtime for that circular on GAAR. What we know as of now is that, yes, P-notes will be kept out of the purview. The circular will also define, as I mentioned, what is meant by substantial commercial interest, also what is also who will be the target of this GAAR, also who will be part of the panel of GAAR. All these definitions are likely to be clarified in that circular itself. Sources also indicate that the circular will will properly clarify that GAAR will only be implemented once stakeholders' opinions have been taken in. To remember, GAAR is part of the direct tax code, which is to be implemented in with the budget of the next year, that is the financial year 2013-2014, and GAAR is likely to be implemented with that, and that's why we see a circular coming in well in advance to give enough time for FIIs to shift perhaps from Mauritius, if that is what they want to do, by defining substantial commercial interest and also by defining what exactly will be the role and the purview of general anti-avoidance rules.
Ashwin, also just wanted to to focus more on the Vodafone issue. If you could just highlight what was the main contentious issue for Vodafone and just walk us through what this would mean for them.
Well, Avan, there are three significant tax concerns that are surrounding India Inc. right now. Number one, of course, is the retrospective amendments to tax laws, which means that if you did a deal a few years back, you could be taxed for that deal right now. So that was the biggest complaint of India, that when we did the deal, we had no idea that we would be taxed. But because of these retrospective amendments, we do stand the sort of grave danger of falling under the tax net. So that's the number one concern, and that of course has received a huge backlash of criticism. So that is one major area, retrospective amendments to tax laws, and it will be interesting to see whether or not the government in fact comes out with a policy or a circular to make that prospective, because once that becomes prospective, that of course takes a sting, the entire sting out of the policy. That is something that India Inc. will be waiting for. So that's the number one tax concern. The number two tax concern, of course, is general anti-avoidance rules, or GAAR. It has already been postponed by 1 year to 2013. There are early indicators that we are getting that it could be postponed beyond 2013 too, and therefore what it means quite clearly is that it will go into the cold storage, and it will be something which India Inc. will not have to be immediately bothered about. But of course, that is something on which we have to formally hear from the government. The third issue, of course, is the issue which is bogging the entire IT sector, and that is software being constituted as royalty, and therefore any payment that IT companies make for the purchase of software from overseas companies, that will also come under the tax net. So retrospective amendments, whether or not they will become prospective, GAAR, whether or not it will be further delayed, and whether there will be a U-turn as far as the software royalty issue is concerned. These are the three main tax issues that are currently blocking the government, and quite clearly it looks like they are succumbing to international investor pressure, and quite clearly Manmohan Singh wants to in fact sort of put things in place and undo the damage that was caused because of the controversial tax laws that were introduced in Budget 2012.